coming up?
What outcome you're aiming for? Are you aiming to go for an exit? Are you aiming to just keep running with it? Are you just want to build a company and take it into the long term? That is going to put them like 100x, 1,000x steps ahead from every other founder. Yeah, the best way for us to help startups or the startups to help themselves is to really get clear on what the priority should be.
Yep.
My biggest advice to them and even any students that are in computer science courses now is become a full stack developer.
Okay.
Learn how to be a technical architect. Don't just focus on one niche, one language, and then learn how to just code, because AI is already here and it's taking a lot of these things and replacing it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Kieran, and this is a revamp of the podcast. Before, it was Depth Exchange, and where I would sit down and have interesting conversations with a wide variety of people. I'm still going to be doing that, of course, but new name of the podcast. But I'm also going to be focusing more so in the business area, more so in the startup and the entrepreneurial space, because I just love talking about business. I mean, I could talk about business for hours, the startups and just everything for hours on end and all that there. But I still also want to have interesting conversations there with people, because I also do believe that there's more behind people than just your careers and whatnot. So, happy to sit down and talk with lots of people in the business world, but also talk to them about business and all that there, but also talk to them about people. And my first guest with me is Nathan Linsley. Nathan, thanks for agreeing to come on. And you are my first guest of 2025, but you're the second episode of season 2. So thanks for agreeing to come on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So Nathan, obviously, for those that don't know you, can you sort of give us a little bit of an intro of who is Nathan Linsley and what's he about and what does he do?
Yeah, so cutting a long story short, obviously, because I've had a very interesting journey. Obviously, I've been in Sydney I moved to Sydney about 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And it's going on, it would have been 2016 I moved to Sydney, and I was studying game development at the time. So my background, So I'm a software engineer. But my journey actually started all the way back as a game developer. I was an aspiring game developer. I really wanted to program games. I still like doing that on the side every now and then. But after I finished my studies, I stumbled across full stack development. So over a couple of years, I got really into the startup space. Mm-hmm. I remember you were sharing a minute ago about how, the startups always have such an inspiring story. Yep. And I guess I wanted to create a story of my own and kind of learn about how the startup space actually works and how people go about building companies. I mean, I went through what I like to call my Zuckerberg phase. It was one of those phases where you're just I'm going to be the greatest tech person that ever... I'm going to invent some crazy technology, or I'm going to build this website or platform that's going to change the world. And that kind of started my journey as a full stack engineer. Funnily enough, I didn't actually start full stack engineering until I didn't actually know what it was until I'd first started doing it. So, fast forward to a couple of years and everything, and I built a couple of websites and I'd learned a few different programming languages, and I actually started my career as a full stack engineer. So now currently I'm working as a full stack engineer, but I recently started my own company. So my own company is called NadoCo Interactive. I started it up, and so I'm transitioning more into the business side of things, but my background is largely in full stack development.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I'm definitely more on the business side of things now. I think it was a very long-winded intro. I think a bit all over the place, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I think in all honesty, in the startup world, you kind of need to be a jack of all trades in most sort of instances. I mean, for me, I can't code to sort of save myself and whatnot, but I do know the business, but I do know the marketing and all those other sort of aspects there to which you do need as a business to run a business. But I think that if you are doing the coding and if you are sort of can do, all the other sort of stuff there. I mean, it just sort of adds more strings to your bow and it just sort of help, it just sort of, adds more strings to your bow. It helps you and it also makes you feel more valuable. I also think there as well, and whatnot. I mean, mind you, for me, I also like a bit of the challenge. You know, I mean, like I'm one of those people there who's always eager to learn and whatnot. But I also know my limitations as well.
Yeah.
But honestly, like when you said to me there that you did game development, I had no idea, because we recently met at Open Coffee Sydney,
Yes.
which was from my previous guest Raghav. That's where he runs that one. He helps organise the events, and that's where we sort of started getting to know each other a bit more, and with the startups and all that there. You said there that you started doing your own startups and whatnot.
Yeah.
Tell us, what was that? What's it like, and what are some of the challenges that you yourself personally have gone through?
So do you want me to, so I can talk a little bit more about like the very beginning, or I can talk about the last year. Start from like the beginning, I guess, when I knew nothing. So, I've been in like startups itself for a couple of years now. Obviously I don't have as many runs on the scoreboard as most people who are quote unquote in startups. Like I hadn't built and scaled a company. I didn't understand how to sell. I didn't understand marketing, business side. All I knew was I was really good at coding and I really wanted to build things. Which kind of more qualifies me as a CTO than anything else. But as we all come to learn over the startup journey, which is one of the biggest things that I learned, is that running a company is not just about being good at one thing. You need to have a lot of skills in different areas in order to be able to succeed. I mean, granted, there are situations where you can focus in one niche, whether it's be programming or marketing or business, and then you would find a co-founder that would help you grow those things. At that time, when I first started in startups, again, I knew no sales, no marketing. I wanted to build something. I didn't have an ambition to have a co-founder at that time. I didn't really know what a co-founder was. And this is what I like to call as the training wheels of startups. You go through these phases where you're trying to understand what a co-founder is and all this. And I had many people that wanted to partner with me, not necessarily on my projects, but also on their own projects as well. They heard that I liked coding, and what I've noticed, especially recently, is whenever you put your hand up and say that you're a programmer, the startups will jump on top of you, because everyone needs a CTO, everyone needs some kind of technical knowledge these days, especially with the advent of AI and all of that.
Exactly.
But in the beginning, I was being asked to come and like do coding for people's startups, and I was presented with my first shareholders agreements. And at that time, I didn't know anything much about contracts or how contracts worked. I was just like, yeah, cool. This one dude, he was a CEO. He's like, I'm going to take 60% of the business and you're going to have 40. And this other, I was working with another, I think she was more business focused or marketing focused. Actually, she was marketing focused. She said, she'll take 20%. But at that time, we didn't have a product. This was like the weird stuff that it kind of put me off getting a co-founder for a while, because I went through so many situations where people were more focused on signing NDAs and shareholders agreements before actually building a product, which is the whole reason a startup exists, is to create a product or service that's going to benefit society. But at my point in time there, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I didn't know. So going through all of that has kind of like prepared me and helped me to understand a little bit better. Like a couple of years ago, I learnt about what funding was, and watching Shark Tank, shows like Shark Tank really kind of, I guess, helped me understand the investing side a lot better. And for a time, I thought that was the only way for startups to kind of get money, besides getting those trickles of revenue when you first start. I really thought, you need to have an investor. So my whole focus on building a startup and kind of the conversations I was having with people is that you need to focus on getting your first round of investment. You need to focus on building a product. Back in the days when ideas were acceptable, ideas don't pass that much these days. But like as I kind of went through all these motions and learning, coming to 2024 was when I finally, I like to say I took the jump, but actually I got laid off from my programming job. So I was working for a startup in Sydney, and I was laid off from my programming job, and I had one of two options. I can either go back and get another job and work as a programmer, which would have been fine, but I've started to kind of explore the idea that I'm not comfortable with fine. I don't want my life to be fine. I want to do things that I can, push my boundaries and explore. So I was like, cool, I'm going to start my own company. So coming throughout 2024, I used my programming skills and then bolted on some sales and marketing skills. Marketing in the sense of just going to networking events a lot, which is how we met at networking events, just talking to countless people, learning and iterating. Like, how do you, I guess, sell yourself well enough that people actually want to work with you? It's one thing to say you're really good at coding, but like what actual value is that going to add to someone? And I was lucky enough to sign my first client back in February of last year.
Oh, wow.
And like the biggest challenges throughout 2024 were definitely pricing and estimating how long projects were going to take. Every project manager and software engineer knows this, is that whenever you say something is going to take X amount of time, it always takes twice as long and costs twice as much.
That's why you probably should always look to sort of say, instead of saying the words best case scenario, always just sort of say, how long are we sort of looking worst case? I mean, and even and even then you sort of go, let's just sort of add another three to so months or weeks or months onto it.
You never know. But I'm a very like straightforward and like ethical, and I guess like I don't like to. So, for example, if I was in a situation, which I was in a project, and it was, I stupidly estimated that it was going to take 2 weeks, and it took several weeks. But I didn't charge my client more for that. Normally, like, I guess a lot of agencies and developers would be like, okay, cool, well, this project's going to take longer, so I need to charge you more. But, and again, like coming back to contracts and stuff, when you sign fixed price with people, you kind of don't have that flexibility. You can't, unless you both agree to that. And if a client's agreed to this amazing deal, which at that time was a really good deal for them, stupidly good, because I was naive and I didn't know any better. But I was like, why would they want to change that? Like, it's like, no, well, you said to this price, you're going to get it done. And I was building this AI system. It had an AI thing in it, it had a back end, it had a front end, it had all these bells and whistles that, would normally constitute a several months project, and, a couple of like 10 grand, 20 grand worth of stuff. But, I still pushed through and did it anyway. And that was probably one of the biggest lessons I learned, not just with that project, but the same lesson kept happening again and again, where I was pricing incorrectly and estimating incorrectly. But over time, I started to get better at that. I guess the most important thing as a startup founder is to always learn and iterate and build on what you already knew. Regular startup founders, obviously, they're building their product. Their version of pivoting and iterating is on their own product. But, I mean, in my way, like, I'm not necessarily building a product, but my business is my product. So I'm not building a software as a service, but I'm building a product, and I need to change my pricing and my estimates and the way that I'm talking to my customers over time to kind of align with what the market's doing and kind of what my personal circumstances are.
Of course.
So those were the challenges.
I mean, you actually sort of said one at the very start, and it actually kind of got me when you're talking about founders, especially co-founders. I actually said in the previous episode to Raghav that it takes so like if you expect to sort of go from sort of one project to the next, it's going to be. If you expect it to go from one project to the next, but like right away, it's you are kidding yourself, to be honest. But trying to find a co-founder, Raghav actually sort of said that it's like a marriage. And to be honest, I actually do agree with that. I really do agree with that. I think that it is actually like a marriage, but you've also got to find, I think, the right person and who actually sort of meets your not meets like your requirements in the terms of the business, but meets you in the terms of the people.
The values.
The values, because like if you have two people there, like let's just say hypothetically speaking, one person there who might be a very good coder, but doesn't really worry about sort of like the money aspect right now and all that there, and just sort of say, look, let's just make sure we build the best product. And then you then have say a co-founder or another person there just saying, no, let's just get the product out right now so we can try and get some revenue into it. It can also really start to sort of it can sort of, you can start to see the wobbles of the ship of that there very early. So that's where I think trying to find the perfect co-founder can actually be very, very difficult, because not only are you looking for someone there who, as I always like to sort of say, know what you don't, know your weaknesses more than your strengths. So that way you can have people there to sort of cover you with your strengths. People there who can cover you with your weaknesses rather. Whereas with your strengths, you can obviously grow, and as you do it there, you can learn it as you go on. But like for me, I can't. As I've said to you so many times, I can't code to save myself. So for me, if I wanted to start up an app and whatnot, I'm not going to be trying to do the code. So it's like, okay, I would be bringing on a co-founder who would be wanting to do coding. But in saying that as well, me and the coder, we would have to sort of get on very well and to try and make sure that there is like that happy medium and there is that unity, because if you can get everyone on the same page, the startup, it starts to actually sort of go very, very smoothly and it really does, knowing that everyone there is in unison there. You know your goals, and you just know where it is that you're going, whether it's a success or a failure and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the biggest thing as well, is the whole, like, the analogy of a marriage with a co-founder relationship, is that you're going to be in this relationship with someone for 5, 10, 15 years or something. I mean, if you're building up to an exit, you're going to exit the startup together. Your relationship needs to last that entire time. But it's not just a case of finding a random person. You need to obviously be aligned on your values. And the biggest challenge for me is, especially with working with startups, because I really genuinely like startups, and I like building startup stuff, is that most startups don't have money.
Exactly.
Which is understandable, or they have very little of it. Yeah. So there's a lot of cases where I would meet a founder and they would say, "Oh, I'm looking for a co-founder," and I'll be like, "Okay, great." And then, of course, running a business, I want to know what their budget is. So we have that conversation, like, I've got zero cash, but we can offer some kind of profit share agreement or co-founder or equity or something like that, which is fine, but to me, it depends on what your values are and what you value. Like, to me personally, equity is something that you have to be really passionate about that startup that you're doing, because even if let's say you accept a small payment plus equity, in order to get things through the door, so you kind of meet in the middle. If the startup fails, and a lot of startups do, that equity goes to zero. Even if that equity might be worth X amount, like a few thousand based on sweat equity or how people calculate it, equity goes to zero when and if a startup fails. But that's why I think it's important to be aligned on those values. When you're looking for a co-founder or any kind of relationship in business, is you need to know exactly what the other person is expecting out of the relationship and what outcome you're aiming for. Are you aiming to go for an exit? Are you aiming to just keep running with it? Are you just want to build a company and take it into the long term? I mean, Microsoft and really big companies, they haven't exited. They've just been going forever and ever. They change CEOs and employees all the time, but they haven't exited. Whereas other companies might be bought by another company, or they'll just sell it. So it's really important to be aligned on those values in the beginning. I'm on board with you there as well. If you don't have those alignment in values, especially in the startup space, that's where trust breaks down. Like, someone expected that they were going to get paid, or they expect, even with equity as well, you will sign up for something. This is the danger of signing a shareholders agreement before you even have a product, is you might realize that you personally have to put in more effort to get the product, especially if it's very technically focused. The CTO is going to be putting in tons of hours. But that's not to say that the CEO or salesperson side of the business doesn't have to put effort as well. But there might be some cases where one person has to put all the effort, and then they become, I guess, very upset or feel like they've been ripped off because they're only getting 20 or 30% of the business. But you've already agreed on that beginning. It's in writing. So that's the challenge, is you need to kind of have that trust with that person that you can either renegotiate those terms later on, or just, because once you get stuck into a situation like that, founders have falling outs, and that's keeping the marriage analogy. That's when you have divorces, and that's
when you start splitting the assets.
And like a divorce, you're splitting the assets, you're splitting all this stuff, and one person wants half the company, the other person wants 90% of the company. It's just messy. So having alignment in values is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually very funny as to what you sort of said there, because with time and all that there. I always sort of look at it like this here. If you're an investor or if you're a co-founder, there are sort of two sorts of ways as to how I sort of value the importance of sort of like an equity partner, or that's either money or time. So you can either invest if you have a shitload of money, you can invest that money and you can potentially be a silent partner. But if you're someone who doesn't have money, but if you're willing to sort of say, look, you know what, I'm willing to work for donkey amount of hours. Pay's going to be shit and all that there, help to get this startup off the ground. I think that's also just as valuable as sort of like a silent equity partner and whatnot. Because but I think it just sort of depends in regards to obviously like what they're looking for. But if someone to me was to sort of say that they don't, because like there are some people there that sort of say, look, they don't have money, but they're willing to sort of work for the business. And, I'm even one of those people there as well at times, I'd be happy to sort of even just sort of work just for the equity in the sort of sense, if I believe in the product. But I see that as also just as valuable as someone who is having lots of money and is willing to invest big into a startup.
Yeah, but obviously, and each side comes with different risks as well. Like investing your time comes with the risk that the startup won't work and that you will have invested, whatever your opportunity cost is, all that, if you calculate it that way. And then money-wise is also, you're not going to get a return on your investment. Exactly. A lot of people, that there's like term sheets and stuff like that. When an investor actually puts money into a company, they kind of have some kind of thing where they invest a certain amount, but like if the startup doesn't, and again, I'm not privy to this because I don't know, but I would assume there would be some way for them to kind of recoup their losses if the startup doesn't work out, or for whatever reason, the startup has certain goals that they have to, or milestones they have to hit, and they don't hit it. The investors will come knocking to get their money back. And again,
that's fair.
That coming back to the relationships as well. If you've got a personal relationship with an investor, that can drastically affect how the dynamics of that relationship are. And I guess especially when it comes to money as well. I was watching a podcast a couple of weeks ago where they were saying that if your parents invest money in your business, for example, or you do something for them and they're investing their money, and then you say, it's all right, I'll pay that back over time. So you start to pay them back because they're an investor. But then, and you can say, but I have a really good relationship with my parents. But this person said, well, then just wait until the day that you miss a payment. Watch your relationship change very quickly.
That just sort of reminds me of the old saying, you don't mix money or business with family, or you don't, like money can sort of turn or change people. Sometimes for the better, or but mostly also for the worse there. Especially if you are going into business with someone, that's where I think the old saying of church and state, where you've got to sort of know sort of, okay, church and state at home, we're family, we talk only about family stuff. Only between this amount of hours, this is when we start talking about business sort of stuff there, and we don't let the two sort of intertwine, because the moment that they start intertwining, that's when the relationship can sort of go belly up and whatnot. If your life partner or family is not involved directly in the business, and we all know that a startup founder's life can be incredly stressful and taxing. So either you take that stress and then you project that back onto your family or your partner, or you end up working such long hours, like you might be working till 10 p.m. at night, and it takes you an hour or 2 hours to get home. So you're going to bed at midnight every night. Your family hardly ever sees you. Yeah. That's another reason why a relationship can fall apart. Yeah, exactly. And it can also, as you sort of said there, put the strain on the relationship. That's kind of why. That's actually kind of why. every time when I do talk to people, they always sort of say sometimes they're like, why would you want to go into startups, or why do you want to do startups and whatnot, but there's also where like even just talking with some people, they sort of say, oh, look, it's a perceived sort of like saying, look, we're going to create the next Microsoft and all that there. For me, I'm always of the belief of that's like always, look, I'm the forever optimist, look, if you build a business and if it goes well, who knows what it might become, but as you sort of said there, most startups do fail, but what I always sort of say when people sort of say, why would you want to go into the startups? And I actually sort of said there to some people that it takes a certain person to actually go into the startups because you work, as you sort of said there, obscene hours, for little to no results on some days there. There are days there where you might work 12 hours and you get like no results, but then the next day there, 2 hours into it, you get a shit ton of results, or the pay, is very, very low. You're trying to make sure that the business, because survives, because if you don't actually do well, then the business could go belly up and whatnot. And that's kind of why, like, I sort of say that startups are for a certain type of people. Like you've got to like you've got to know the risks that are coming into it and whatnot for that daily sort of grind and whatnot. And that's what I believe in. But there's also, like, as you sort of said there, the challenge. And I think that's what really does make, it really does sort of show us who we are. And I think the positives of it there, sure, if it goes belly up, the startup might, obviously if it goes belly up, you've lost all your money, all that time there. But if it pays off, who knows where it might go. But I do say that it does take a certain type of person, like it does take a certain type of person, because you would be leaving a stable 9 to 5 where you're getting paid hourly. You're getting sort of like super, or you're getting all these other benefits and whatnot. You are leaving all that behind to basically starting up a business and it's like basically to the unknown. You're stepping into the unknown.
Yeah, and I guess and even if you were to go beyond that, just purely putting your time in and not getting paid, even in situations where you are getting paid, it's important to have that perspective as well and understand that if you do get paid in a startup, you're not going to get paid the so-called minimum wage of your profession. If you're a programmer, most software engineers, at least at my level, at a senior level, you run at like $800 a day, or if you're on a salary, you might be like, I don't know, 140K a year minimum or something. But if you're working in a startup, you might be on 90K. If you have that, funding round gone through, you might be on a 90K or 80K a year salary. And again, as a co-founder, might be on even less than that. But if you are getting paid, it's important to have that perspective that, and I fell into this trap a few times, is assuming that just because let's say a project is going to take 3 or 4 weeks to do and you get an MVP done, and then it goes beyond that 4 weeks, I'm working for free now. It's like, well, no, you're not working for free, just your time is worth less. Yeah. So especially with fixed price as well, if I was to look back over the course of 2024 and count up all of the additional time that I spent on projects that was quote unquote unpaid, that's in the multiple tens of thousands of dollars in terms of time. There was projects that they took 3 months instead of a month and stuff like that. Not necessarily because I'm a bad developer. I think I'm quite exceptional at what I do, but being one guy working on an entire platform by themselves and having to build it out definitely plays a part. Yeah, and of course. Over time, you get paid for it, but your time gets worth less. But that is the danger of when you are getting paid to do your work, if you're lucky enough, is make sure you have the right perspective and don't think that you're working for free. It's like you've been compensated. You may be getting paid less, but don't think about the numbers. Again, it all comes back to the why you're doing it. You really need to love why you're doing it. Do not go into a startup if you're just expecting to get a steady paycheck. I mean, that's what 9-to-5 jobs are for. I mean, in a way, like working for an established startup or scale up is kind of like having a job. There are companies that have like 20 plus people in them and increase. Like that's something where you kind of can expect a steady paycheck and all this. But even then, those kind of companies go bust. But outside of that, if you're getting paid even a little bit, always maintain the perspective of why are you doing it? What is the end goal? Always start with the end in mind of why you're doing that thing. And that will, I guess, avoid a lot of the friction that comes associated with, hey, mate, like, you know, this has taken too long, I'm not getting paid enough or something. It's like, well, no, you agreed to that. Like,
of course.
It avoids that friction by having that perspective of you're working in a startup, this is your baby and you need to grow it. And its success depends on your effort and your tenacity and grit to pull through despite what results you may or may not get in the short term.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I mean, like, to be honest, I couldn't have put it any better than myself because, you know, like it is a baby. You know, like it is your baby. I mean, like the previous startup that I worked for, you know, I mean, even though that I wasn't an equity partner, to me, it was like a baby of mine. You know, like it was like my baby because I worked, you know, with that startup. I obscene, you know, I mean, like you know, like lots of hours. I mean, look, don't get me wrong, I love it, but to me it was like that's also my baby, and like I completely agree with that. You know, I mean, and if you were to say to me, look, would I go back and do it again? I think during it, I mean, with the long, you know, I mean, like at times there the potential long days, I would probably say no, but then looking back, I would be like, you know what, I worked with some really good people. I worked with some really good people in the startup. They were very, very good. Very, very good to me, and whatnot. If those people there came back to me and said to me, Kieran, we're doing another startup, would you want to do it? I would, you know, and that's also kind of what I also would want to do as well, which is, you know, go back into the startups and, you know, work in another startup as well. And, you know, and I think when you go back and when you look at it, you learn a lot more than what you actually learn a lot more by looking at it rather than you actually learn a lot more just by looking back at it and saying, you know what, this is how it went. This is how, you know what, these are things there now going back. Okay, now I've learnt this, I've learnt that. For my next startup, I can take that with me. I can take those skills and I can take the experience there along with me, and that's sort of something there as to which I think is very, very invaluable and whatnot. So that's where, like, you are right in the sense there where it is like a baby and whatnot, and you want it to succeed, and you know, and you just also sort of feel that very like a kick in the guts when it doesn't really sort of take off, or when you have to sort of you know, or when it's not growing the way how you expected and whatnot. It feels like that you yourself haven't worked as hard, or you haven't done anything there, and you know, and like that's where, like you know, if you are working with a group of or a team that you are working with, that you also feel sorry for them as well, because it's like, we are a family, we're like a team, and you know, we just hoped, but it just didn't come to fruition.
Yeah, that's why also, like, I guess building on the past point and your points you just made as well, is the people that you work with is the most important thing, and focusing less on the results that you get and who you become. The startup is not about all the stuff that you get in return, it's how much you've grown as a person. Exactly. For example, like, I mean, I was part of a mentorship as well, a business, not some Amway thing, but I was part of like a kind of a mentorship, like coaching program kind of thing, and there was some business stuff tied into that. And I kind of started off not knowing sales and marketing, but obviously talking with the guys on there, and I guess learning and iterating over time as I felt myself growing as a person and as a startup founder. I think that before 2024, I could not actively call myself a startup founder.
Yeah.
We're all happy to put titles on our LinkedIn and put like T-shirts and saying I'm the CEO and founder, but like, are you really putting in the hard yards? Are you learning and growing as a person? Because it's one thing to have a title and it's another to actually have those runs on the scoreboard of like putting in that effort and like where did you go from back then to where you are now? And actually, you mentioned as well as like at the end of it, even if it doesn't go well, you look back and you think, well, maybe I could have done this part a little bit differently. Exactly. But you never would have had those experiences if you've never taken that leap. And that's why a lot of people that are working in jobs, maybe they're thinking about starting a startup, but they don't want to take that leap because they think of like, what if it doesn't work? I mean, there's obviously there's the traditional or the cliche of like, but what if it does work? But there's also you'll always grow as a person over no matter what. Even if you don't get millions and billions of dollars, you will still become a better person because of it.
I agree.
So that's the best perspective and thing to take away.
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree with that, you know, because like with the previous startup that I worked with, you know, like I loved working with the people there, you know, like I absolutely love them and whatnot. Like I'm still in contact with a few of them as well and whatnot. And like, to be honest, you know, like as I previously just sort of said there before, if they were to come to me and said to me, Kieran, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'd be more than happy to work with them there because of what I've learnt from them, and you know, and like I'm just so eager to grow, and it just sort of takes me back to the quote, to like this sort of quote that I sort of or the old adage where you're not a lawyer until you've lost a case, or you're not a doctor until you've like lost a patient, or you're not like a fireman until you've walked into a fire or something like that. There, for me, you're not like a founder or like an entrepreneur until you've worked in a startup, whether or not it's you as a co-founder, or whether or not it's you as whether or not it's you as just being there from the very beginning. You're not, in my opinion, you're not an entrepreneur until you've worked in a failed startup.
In a failed startup.
Failure
is what makes the people. Failure makes the man, as I think. I don't know who said that, but yeah, failure is where it all starts. You need to fail to grow.
Exactly. And that's what I sort of do believe as well, because like you learn so much as you sort of go from that. And that's where I just sort of sit back and I just sort of look and I go like, you know, there's all these startups out there, and like obviously, you know, like we want to sort of help them, but it can be very, very tough. But also like if someone does fail it, what's their next step after that? Are they going to go back into it, or are they going to sort of say no, it got a little bit too hard? But in saying that as well, you know, circumstances do change. You know, I mean, who knows what might happen there with the circumstances. You also said there earlier there, Nathan, and this is actually a question here to which what I wanted to ask there. You said there that startups need help and whatnot. Because you know, like because they have a lack of budget. I mean, like unless for example, like managed to have some very, very, very powerful friends and whatnot who have like millions and millions of dollars and whatnot. How do you think startups, or like how do you think we can sort of help startups try and be more like? I won't say be more successful, but to try and, let's just say, I think I remember watching a video somewhere, I think, where they're saying, especially in the next 12 to 18 months, where like small businesses or even startups, like 1 in 20 of them, I think that was on the ABC or somewhere, where like 1 in 20 of them might fail in the next 12 to 18 months and whatnot. Which, you know, might not seem a lot, but it's still, when you scale that up, that's still a lot. But how do you think like we can try and sort of push it to make it where startups, you know, they don't really sort of, or to try and help them succeed is the word that I'm trying to sort of look at.
Yeah, I mean the first point of success that a lot of startups is like, how do I get my first investment? But I disagree with the whole like money side of things.
Yep.
There's obviously the building the best product is the next thing, but I think learning sales and getting really good at sales and being able to sell your products, because there are a lot of really brilliant software engineers, especially in my industry. Like, I'm one of the weird software engineers that knows how to communicate. Where the stereotype is you've got a hood on, or you're just sitting in a corner. Your work is absolutely brilliant, but you can't talk to people to save your life. And
like you see them in those movies and whatnot.
Yeah, like in the hackers and all this kind of thing, you know. But like the output that they have is exceptional, and they might have built the best product, but you know, if they can't sell that product or don't have, at least if you're unable to do something, like if you don't know how to do it, you can just learn how to do it. But if you just refuse to learn, or you're too scared to learn or something, you're going to suffer a lot more. Versus there's people that maybe, they've come from that background where they have a lot more social skills and they're more open, or they have that sales background. That is going to put them like 100x, 1,000x steps ahead from every other founder, because they know how to sell their thing. And it's not just about, sometimes you can have a really average product but exceptional sales skills and still do really well, versus having an amazing product but crappy sales skills. If you doesn't matter how good your product is, if you can't sell it in the end and convince people why they should put money on it, that's the biggest. So I think, as well as like trying to, I guess, get money, like you don't need money to start a startup, unless you're in something that is a really capital intensive industry. Like if you want to start a rocket company like Elon, like you need money to do that, obviously.
Of course.
You need to pay people. But if it's something like building an app or something, or like simple things that you can build in your own time with some code and stuff, once you've found the right co-founder, you know, and you've got tools like NadoCo available, you can build your first prototype and MVP pretty quickly. And like, if you play your cards well enough, you can start driving revenue earlier rather than later. And coupled with the sales skills that you learn over time, I think, the best way for us to help startups, or for startups to help themselves, is to really get clear on what the priority should be. Which is, and again, if you're talking about getting investment these days, especially in 2025, 2024, investors don't care about how cool your idea is. It's like, how much traction do you have? What revenue are you generating?
It's a numbers game.
And they want to see those numbers. And if you can learn those sales skills and get even your first sale through the door, in some cases, like if you're in a B2B and you've got an enterprise grade product or something, if you've got just one client, that is often enough to at least convince one investor to give you some money. So that brings the priority to not how much money can we get, is like how much can we grow ourselves, the sales skills to actually sell our product and grow it, and then we can actually get that money that's going to allow us to scale. Exactly. Like aside from getting money, sales skills is probably the first and foremost most important skill for any founder.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do agree with that. I also think that as well is that you've also got to have, depending on your product as well. I mean, I think you've also got to have, you've also got to know, obviously, as I always like to say there, you like to be like you have to be a bit of a jack of all trades. But I also think that marketing as well, that marketing sales aspect. I know you sort of said there's sales, but I also think marketing as well is also a very crucial point there as well, because like there's so many people out there in the world. I mean, like I think there's about 8 billion plus people in the world there. You know, I mean, like you can't just keep calling. I mean, like you can't call 8 billion of them inside of a week and whatnot. So you've got to be able to try and find ways to market and to get your product out there. But as well alongside that there. But I definitely do think that that's something there to which is needed alongside sales. But I also think that a lot of startups, I think one thing there that I won't say is a factor, but I think there's also a little bit of that fear factor in sort of founders as well, because you know, of that potential, like whether or not the idea is going to be good, is will people be able to like it, and will people will be able to sell and whatnot, and I think that's where, you know, if you can as you sort of said there, if you can get your first client, or if you can even just, for example, like just even if you do your research well, but you got to make sure that the research is well versed before you sort of say, okay, yeah, look, this is the way as to how it sort of goes there. But I do think that like some founders can might be gun shy, but then again, who knows? I mean, like there are some founders there who sort of say, look, you know what, let's just start it.
Yeah, like honestly, so when I started doing sales I sell software development services. So my number one process, my process that I follow is usually I meet a founder, I go through and I find out what their challenges are. Yep. Do they need tech help or not? We have those conversations, work out what their scope is. We agree on a price, sign the contract, and start. Yep. But in the beginning, like I didn't really know what to say to people. I mean, if I I wish I could record some of the previous conversations I had. They were probably horrendously embarrassing at the worst case, or just like I wasn't asking the right questions. Yep. Like I never actually wrote down a script for what to say. As I said, like I'm one of those weird software engineers that actually knows how to communicate. So I'd already had some previous runs on the scoreboard actually communicating with people. And I've been going to networking events. So it's like, so 2023 around May or April was when my networking really picked up. So I went from being the poor, quiet guy in the corner of the room to the one that was bouncing around like a ping pong ball, talking to everybody who would listen to me. And those skills definitely translated into sales, because then networking then became I'm just there talking to people. Is like, well, no, now I have an actual divine purpose of why I'm there. I'm actually there to execute a plan, which is I need to find a client, or I need to find some people that I can help and work with. So, but that's not to say it was perfect either. Like, I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning. I didn't write a script, but over time, like, you learn how to do the right thing and say the right thing. But a lot of founders, as you said, are a bit gun shy, or I like to say they're scared of pulling the trigger. You've done a little bit of research into your customer. You've thought a little bit about how you're going to talk to them. It's just then a case of actually taking action. And the same as a product, you are a product as much as your product is a product. If you don't, like, you should iterate and fail on yourself as much as you should iterate and fail your product. You can pivot your startup, but we also need to learn to pivot ourselves as well.
Yeah, when you put it all there, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, like we look at ourselves as a product in a way. Like if you're going to a networking event and you're going one direction and saying this particular thing and doing this thing with your sales skills and strategy, you're always, if you keep doing the same way, you're going to get the same result. But if you realize that what you're doing kind of sucks, well, it's like, well, okay, well, let's reflect. Okay, let's pivot. Then you've essentially pivoted. It's like, I like to call it micro pivoting. Instead of you're not changing your whole business, I'm still selling software, but I'm changing the way. Like if I go up to a startup founder and speak to them as if they're an enterprise client, it's completely different. I noticed this when I went to Perth to a networking event. I went there I flew all the way to Perth. It was crazy.
Wow.
I flew all the way to Perth to a networking event just because I wanted to practice. And I went there to talking to these CEOs and like execs in companies that I'm a web freelancer, right?
Oh, wow.
I was a web freelancer at the time. They did not care. They were like, the communication and the words that you use is very different depending on who you talk to. But that's why it's important to, I guess, go into this, pull the trigger, take that action and go and actually give it a go. And then once you realize something doesn't work, change it and make it better. And the same token as well, if something is working, don't change it. I made this mistake as well in every business I've done. Even I was in Amway and mentorship before. Is I would find something that was working and then I would change it, and I'd be like, oh, like I'm not making sales anymore. I'm not getting any clients. But it's like, well, because you've changed something that was working. So as much as you should pivot and try and like take action and pivot, it's important to, when you find something that works, stick with it.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of that old adage. It's like doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same result is the definition of insanity.
Exactly.
Yes. I definitely do remember that old adage and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, like I completely agree. I mean, to be honest, I actually didn't know that you flew all the way there to Perth and whatnot. I mean, like, to be honest, wow. I mean, like that.
I have a lot of crazy stories.
Oh,
you'd be surprised.
I mean, look. To be honest, I'll have to get you back on and whatnot to try and see if I can actually, try and see if we can get more of your to get more of your stories and whatnot. But you said there that you're a software engineer and that you've also were a game developer and all that there.
Yeah.
Just quickly before I then wrap up and whatnot, with AI.
Yes.
Thoughts on like I spoke with Raghav about AI as well, so be sure to check that episode out there as well. But thoughts on AI, way of the future, and like how is that going to sort of affect the way of sort of software engineering, but also but also with the way of startups as well, but also just as a whole and in general.
Yeah, so my view on AI, I mean, everyone was in the beginning very fearful of AI replacing a lot of jobs. And definitely like the very menial jobs that are very numbers and detail driven can definitely be replaced by AI.
Yep.
I think it was the World Economic Forum released a statement about which jobs are most likely to be replaced in the next year or the next 5 years or something.
Yep.
And definitely those detail and numbers oriented jobs, definitely an AI can put some challenges there. But and I definitely think that in terms of my industry as well, I mean, junior software engineers who only know how to write little scripts and stuff, they really, my biggest advice to them and even any students that are in computer science courses now is become a full stack developer.
Okay.
Learn how to be a technical architect. Don't just focus on one niche, one language, and then learn how to just code, because AI is already here and it's taking a lot of these things and replacing it. I mean, I wanted to sort out some files on my computer, and I posted a stat on my LinkedIn a while ago. I was like, I've wrote 18,000 lines of code last year. Did you see that?
I think I do remember actually seeing that. I can't actually remember. I think I do remember you doing a post like that there a while ago or whatnot. I can't actually remember.
But I didn't actually calculate. I didn't sit there and count all the lines of code. I wrote a Python script to do that. But I didn't write it. ChatGPT wrote it. And little things like that. I'm like, hey, I really want to count all the lines in these texts. I literally just wrote a Python script, chucked it into this folder, and I said, I want you to scan every line in this code file and then return the number. And I just asked ChatGPT to generate that. It generated it in 10 seconds, and I put it in there and it just worked straight away.
Wow.
I've never coded in Python. There was one client I was working with. Again, coming back to the sales skills, I sold myself really well on a client that had an Angular, which is a front-end language-based project. I had 1 week of experience with Angular, and I got a $12,000 contract.
Wow.
Because I used AI so effectively to teach myself how to code in this language. So I already had that previous experience as a full-stack developer, which definitely helped. And that's where I think the AI has its limitations. You can tell AI to write all your code for you, but a software engineer is the only person who can tell when it's BSing you.
Yeah.
AI BSs a lot, and that's the biggest limitation is it'll tell you about libraries that don't exist. It'll give you little bits of code where it doesn't have context of what you're working on. So it'll tell you to do things that won't work in your context. And it'll tell you about things that might have worked a year ago because it's always a year late in terms of its knowledge. But someone broke it. So you've downloaded that new coding package and then all of a sudden it doesn't work. So in terms of AI's capabilities right now, definitely junior software engineers and computer science students need to really upskill themselves and not just focus on their niche. I mean, in unis now, I think they're teaching Node, Python, and Java. I think I hear of a lot of engineers learning, but really learn how to be a full stack engineer and learn how to design systems. Because at this point in time, and that's not to say that in the future they won't, but at this point in time, AIs cannot design scalable systems. They cannot design a tech stack that suits a particular requirement. I mean, they can give you some ideas around it, but there's these little nuances that only a software engineer, a technical architect who has that wide, diverse skill set will be able to understand. So that's where software engineers can stand out. And in terms of AI itself, I mean, it's replacing a lot of things, but the same way that cars replaced horses back in the day, I think it was Ford Motor Company who invented the first car. I've said this so many times, is people will learn and adapt. It's not a case of thousands of jobs were lost from stables when cars became a thing. But society adapted and evolved. So it's not a case of AI coming in and destroying everything.
Yeah.
It's a case of it's a catalyst for change
Exactly.
more than an end all that's going to destroy everything. It's a catalyst for change and rapid and significant change.
Exactly, and that's something similar to what sort of like Raghav sort of said as well. I mean that how it's going to sort of give back time or
Yes.
give us back time as well for us in order to be able to succeed as well. And I just know that even now with the startups and whatnot that you do sort of see like a lot of people there wanting to get ahead of the curve with AI and all that there. And I just sort of look at it and I go, it's a very exciting time and whatnot, but you've also just going to have to sort of, but we've also just got to sort of look at it and go, okay, yep, we're here right now. Like we've also got to focus on the future, but there is some very exciting times ahead, but you've just also got to make sure that you're in the right place at the right time and you also know all this sort of stuff there. Like you sort of said there, be a full stack developer and all that there and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, like I'm very excited in regards to it there with AI, but one thing there, what I'm also very hopeful is that it doesn't take away sort of like the skills that we all necessarily need and require as well, you know, because what happens, let's just say if the AI doesn't work or if there's a computer glitch. I mean, hell, I think there wasn't there like a security or like a Microsoft sort of thing or sorry, not Microsoft, but like last year there was the
CrowdStrike.
Yes, that's the one. Sorry.
Tech goes wrong. Like there's things that, you know, there'll be one thing that's sort of out of whack. I mean, even ChatGPT, right? Like, I've set up subscribe to the emails of their alerts and stuff. ChatGPT goes down every couple of days for a couple of hours but the really funny thing is we're so reliant on these AI tools like ChatGPT that when they actually go offline, a lot of us are scratching our heads and don't know what to do. When Facebook went down like a year ago or something, the world was in pandemonium. I was like, what do I do with my life now? I mean, TikTok got banned in the US 2 days ago, and then the entire US went into meltdown or something, at least socially. And then they reversed it. Like, they didn't reverse the ban, but like TikTok actually we'll leave it there for a while. I mean, it's still on they're unsure in terms of the federal law because the Supreme Court did actually rule that TikTok is banned and it's illegal in the US, so that's a bit unsure there. But it just goes to show that we have this huge reliance on things in our life and technology, and this is the danger of AI-based startups as well, and too much reliance on AI is when these things break, if they're based on an underlying technology like GPT, when they go wrong, they can go very wrong. And that's where, and I mean, there's always these conversations about compliance and all these kinds of things as well. Like whatever is being sent to these LLMs are being used to train the LLMs. And when you're in industries like fintech and medtech, where compliance and data and regulation is like so important, you know, you want to make sure that these technologies are going well and working in the right way. Otherwise, you land yourself in a lot of legal hot water, but also in a lot of technical hot water as well, because if your entire system shuts down because, like, if your whole company is based off of it, you know, you end up in a lot of technical hot water as well. And then you got to scramble to try and fix it. And that's where traditional software engineering stands out, is how... Like, instead of using a pre-built LLM or something, like if you can learn how to, I guess, don't over-engineer your technology to use a really complex LLM, but only use like 10% of its power or features. Build something that's going to solve the particular problem at hand. That's why when I work with startup founders, I say, let's build our app in Flutterflow, which is a no-code tool first, versus building it with writing out all the code ourselves and then having a chance. Like, we don't need to over-engineer this thing. And the same thing with AI as well. It's like everyone goes to using GPT or Claude, but like if you can build it just with a simple function or a loop that works in the beginning, like these are the kinds of things that a human knows how to do. And this is where I think the power comes in as a software engineer. I mean, going back to the previous conversation, that AI is brilliant, but
Yep.
it's important to not get too attached to it and understand that it's as broken and as anything. There's things that can go wrong, and the degree of how much they can go wrong depends on our reliance on them.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, like, I definitely do agree. I mean, like you said there, when Facebook went down a few years ago, I mean, like, I actually remember there was I think it was like a 45-minute period there where Google went down a few years ago. And I actually remember because I was actually trying to send out a couple of emails, and I was then actually, as I was sending out a few emails, Google just went down for like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then when I then sent the message off to someone there, sort of said, oh, is your Google account sort of fine and whatnot? And they said, what are you talking about? And this was like after it. I'm like, it must have been me. And then it wasn't until I then saw like on social media that Google like went down for about 45 minutes or like there was like a little bit of a it was like around 2022 or something there, like if I remember correctly. But like, yeah, I mean, you are right. Like, we still need to sort of like have those skills and all that there. I mean, like, I don't want to put it into like simple terms, but I mean, if we all know how to sort of flick a switch in order to turn the lights on and whatnot, I mean, like, yeah, sure, look, we want to have AI that can, do that, but if we don't know how to turn off a light ourselves, it's going to be, it's going to be very, very difficult, and it's going to potentially regress us to a potential time there where I don't think where we want to go, where we don't want to have technology almost do everything for us, but but we also want to make sure that we do know it as well.
Yeah, and I know we're coming up to the hour here, but I wanted to kind of just add one last thing, is that, I think talking, like, we've all heard about imposter syndrome and stuff, is that AI creates a lot of imposters as well, is people that use these technologies, these really fantastic technologies like Relevance AI that creates this unlimited amount of power to create these AI agents, which is kind of frustrating as a software engineer when someone who has no experience in coding comes into these tools and suddenly acts like they've discovered fire. They act like they're a brilliant software engineer, they've invented everything. That is what I admire so much about the people in communities like Build Club, is that I would argue that they are probably the closest to like real engineers that are actually taking on the boundaries. I
love Build Club.
Yeah, they're not just going in there and just playing around with GPT stuff. I mean, I've even found that when I've presented some of my apps in there, I am nothing compared to those guys. Like they're so talented and so skillful.
Like,
but
I haven't been to Build Club personally, but I really do want to go because there are people there like Peter Doe, who we met from Open Coffee Sydney. I have a conversation with him, who I'm also trying to get him on the podcast as well. But I have a conversation with him, and he talks a bit about Build Club, and I just sort of look at it, and like every time when I see Annie's posts or even just or even just Build Club's posts, I just sort of look and I just sort of go like, wow, even though that I'm not like as I say before, I can't code to save my life. Part of me just sort of goes like, you know what? Like, part of me actually just wants to maybe just sort of go and do Build Club just to sort of even just try and learn, like even just the bare minimum, because it's like that way I can add more strings to my bow. But like, I love Build Club, like just from an outside observer looking in, like I am loving the ways to how they're doing it and the ways how they're revolutionizing it as well. And like that's just something there to which from my observation.
Yeah, and I think that like having communities like Build Club and creating other communities like that, which focuses on the real growth of software engineering in general versus creating a bunch of tools that are, significantly tied to a particular LLM. Like that is that is real AI in my opinion. So that's the biggest part.
Yeah, well, we are past the hour mark and whatnot. So we are getting close. We are getting close to the wrap up and whatnot. Yep. So, but Nathan, again, thank you again for agreeing to come on the podcast and whatnot. I'm definitely going to be trying to have you back on a little bit like later, whether it might be a couple of episodes later or whatnot, because to be honest, I just feel like that this conversation, like we can have sort of like a 2-3 hours sort of, we can have multiple episodes and whatnot. I mean, whether or not that's either here in the studio or whether or not that's through Google Meets or whether because I'm also looking to try and sort of expand the podcast a little bit more. Who knows? Maybe we might be able to sort of do it. like remotely, like with microphones or somewhere like out just even having a coffee, or hell, we could even do it somewhere else and we can just record it. We can just video it. Like
we can get like multiple people. We can have like some of those talk shows happening.
Yeah,
We've got like 4 people on here.
Exactly there, mate. But before I let you go, there's a question there to which I have gotten there from my previous guest, which is Raghav, and I am going to give you the question. Which is, what is the most human experience you had with AI?
So I think this came up only a couple of weeks ago. OpenAI released their voice feature quite recently, and even more recently, they put this real-time voice in there.
Yep.
And being able to have those natural human conversations with AI, almost perfect human conversations, changed everything. There
are apps now that actually do that, where you actually have like actual human conversations, or not actual human conversations, but it's like you type in something with the AI, and they just come back with the response. Now, obviously, you can obviously sort of refresh it and whatnot to get a different response. But yeah, that's just something there. Sorry.
It's fine. I think like the most human experience is like having those real-time voice features, and they're only getting better. I'm even like in my game development stuff, and I'm wanting to use AI a lot more. Like, I really want to hook AI, ChatGPT, up to a game with the voice thing, and then have it so I can walk up to NPCs and have actual conversations with them. I know people are already doing that, but like I just think it would be really cool to see. And like, I've had these most really human conversations with AI. Like, I'll tell the AI about a particular problem I'm having, whether it's in sales or even in my personal life with my relationships, or hey, like I'm dating this girl and like this happened and like I'm not sure how to respond to it. And I mean, I grew up with autism, right? So like I wasn't the best at understanding how to respond to people. So having, I guess, which is ironic, having a robot tell me how to respond to humans, I guess, like sometimes I think that with these features getting so advanced, we forget that we're talking to an AI sometimes. Yeah. Like, they'll come back with human-like responses, and they'll have in these little nuances of the ums and the ahs and when they're actively thinking about what they're saying, which you won't get in the text-to-based ChatGPT thing. But afterwards, if you go back and look at the conversation, because it records the transcript, it does have those ums and ahs in there. But having those human elements in there is probably one of the most human experiences I've had. I can't pinpoint an exact example, but there's been a few times where I've actively just sat on the conversation with AI and talked about an issue I'm having, and it's given me like a really good response.
It's a very scary thought, to be honest, going forward. Which I mean, obviously, to be honest, like I think that it shows just how fast or how well AI is growing, but it's also very, very scary, the fact that like they're able to sort of get the emotions or to say the ums and the ahs, and it sounds like that you are having a human conversation and whatnot. I mean, like as soon as Raghav actually sort of said that, I was just like sitting, I was just going, oh damn, I mean, like wow. But thanks again, Nathan, for agreeing to come on. My next,
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to be leaving. You're going to be now saying the next question for my next guest.
Okay.
So take it away. I mean, what are you going to be asking my next guest?
There was 2 that I was tossing up on my way here. I think that it's either going to be what is the biggest sacrifice that you've ever had to make?
Yep.
And like, how is what positives have you seen come from that? And the second one was what is the most pivotal moment in your life? Like, what is the one thing that happened in your life that you feel like was where your life completely changed? Like, for me, that was moving to Sydney was the most pivotal moment in my life. I think I would even go with that second one, actually. Yep. Like, what has been the most profound thing that happened in your life that you realize that your life is never going to be the same again in a positive way, or even in a really, like, even if it was a negative situation in the beginning, like, what was that life-changing moment that you had?
I think for my one, I'll just sort of, I don't know, but I mean, like that, there's a very good question. But I think for my one, it might be definitely like working in the startups, because like for me, working in that startup really did sort of give me a taste of it and whatnot. But like in saying that as well, like it was also, just post COVID as well. So I mean, like COVID, I think a lot of people there could potentially say was a very pivotal was a very pivotal time. But like, I'm very excited to actually hear what my next guest will be actually saying for that there. But again, Nathan, thanks again for agreeing to come on. I mean, like to be honest, like I feel like that we could have this conversation for like 2-3 hours, but I'm definitely going to try and get you back on, whether or not it's in person here in the studio, whether or not it's somewhere else where we can just sort of video it, or we can just sort of record it somewhere else, or we can do it online and whatnot. But it's been an absolute honor, and it's been an absolute pleasure just to sort of have this conversation there with my podcast. So thanks again for agreeing to come on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No worries. And thanks again, everyone, for listening, and I'll see you all in the next episode.